For 4 months I repaired every failing system on Kythera reactors, water purification, agricultural domes, and when Queen Sereth told me there would be a ceremony to honor the completion, I thought it was just a thank you event, not understanding that 4 months of work had consequences I never imagined. Marcus Flynn leaned over the final control panel in the planet's main recycling facility. With a satisfied hum, he flipped the switch, bringing the last system online. The indicator lights blinked green as water started moving through the purification process once more. His fingers lingered on the console for a moment longer before snapping back to reality with a sigh. "All right," Marcus muttered, rubbing his eyes. "Everything's done." He turned and made his way out of the facility, grabbing his gear from the workbench where he had left it earlier in the day. The hallway was dimly lit. As he walked towards his quarters, only maintenance lights were on now that all systems were up and running. As he reached his room and opened the door to drop everything inside, Queen Sereth's voice echoed through the intercom. "Marcus, could you come to my chambers?" Her tone held a note of urgency he hadn't heard before. He hesitated for a moment, but then straightened himself and headed toward her quarters. When Marcus arrived at the grand entrance of the Queen's palace, it was quiet save for his echoing footsteps on the marble floor. A guard nodded respectfully as he entered and turned left to find Sereth waiting inside one of the larger chambers used for meetings. "Queen," Marcus greeted with a slight nod, removing his dusty gloves as she approached him. Sereth's copper-gold skin glowed in the dim light. Her amber hair was neatly tied back. "Marcus, thank you for coming so quickly." She paused before continuing. "You've completed everything now, haven't you?" "Yes," Marcus replied simply, looking around at the luxurious surroundings. He felt out of place, but focused on his purpose here. "I just finished bringing the last system online." Her eyes softened as she nodded appreciatively. There was a moment's silence before she spoke again. "The ceremony is tomorrow." Marcus blinked in confusion. "Ceremony?" Sereth gave him a gentle, almost sad smile. "To honor the completion of the restoration. Your work here has not only repaired my world, but brought it back to life." He shrugged, rubbing his neck awkwardly. "It was just what I do. A job is finished." She stepped closer and looked at him intently. "You see things simply because you don't understand yet," she said softly. "I guess," Marcus responded with a sigh, folding his arms across his chest. He felt uncomfortable under her steady gaze, but also oddly drawn to it. "I haven't really been thinking about anything beyond the job." Something flickered in Sereth's eyes, a mix of hurt and resolve. "The bond formed through this work is more than you know," she explained carefully. Marcus frowned, tilting his head slightly. "Bond?" Sereth took a deep breath, as if gathering strength to explain something crucially important. "In my culture, assisting someone with repair or creation establishes a sacred debt, bond proportionate to the effort and care given." She paused again before continuing in a more serious tone. He stared at her blankly for several seconds, then nodded slowly. "Okay, you will understand tomorrow," Sereth said gently but firmly. "For now, you should rest." Marcus glanced out of the window briefly into the darkening sky outside, where lights were turning on across Kythera as systems came to life once more thanks to him. "All right," he sighed heavily before nodding again towards her. "You'll be there tomorrow for whatever it is." He turned and began walking back toward his quarters, leaving Queen Sereth standing alone in the chamber with a thoughtful expression on her regal face. Marcus walked into his room and started packing up his gear carefully, preparing to leave Kythera as he had planned. But something about what Sereth said lingered heavily at the back of his mind. He wasn't sure what it meant or how deep these cultural customs ran, but one thing was clear: nothing felt right anymore. Tomorrow would be a day where questions might finally find answers or create more confusion than ever before. Marcus Flynn woke up early, finding it hard to ignore the strange feeling that had settled in his gut since Sereth's last visit. He dressed himself properly for onsen and clean, and hesitated as he reached for his ever-present tool belt. Foregoing it felt wrong, But today was different. Today was about more than just work. As Marcus made his way through the palace halls towards the grand hall where thousands of Kytherans were assembled, a knot formed in his stomach. The air inside seemed charged with anticipation and curiosity as he approached the ceremonial gathering place. Guards nodded respectfully to him on either side, but none offered any words beyond welcoming nods. The sight that greeted Marcus upon entering was both overwhelming and surreal, an expansive hall filled to capacity with Kytherans of all ages and stations, their faces a mix of awe and wonder directed at him as he stood by the entrance. Queen Sereth, wearing ceremonial robes adorned in intricate golden patterns, stood majestically near the center. She looked magnificent, her copper-gold skin glowing under the flickering light from above, amber hair cascading down her shoulders, but she also appeared nervous. Marcus felt a pang of concern when he saw this rare vulnerability on her usually composed face. But before he could take another step towards her, Sereth began to speak with clarity and authority that silenced every whisper in the hall instantly. 4 months ago, Queen Sereth started, our world was dying. The murmurs from those around Marcus grew into nods of agreement as she continued. Today, it lives because of one human. She gestured towards him with a sense of pride and reverence had never witnessed before. His heart thumped loudly in his chest. Marcus Flynn came to fix a reactor. Sereth's voice carried through the hall like the gentle hum of machinery coming online after maintenance. He stayed to rebuild our civilization. The crowd murmured their approval, their voices merging into an appreciative roar that seemed almost musical against the grandeur of the hall. Marcus felt himself smile despite his confusion, taking in this unexpected praise. And why is it important? Sereth's voice dropped slightly, but carried even further now. Because creation and repair are sacred acts on Kythera. She paused to let her words sink into every soul present before continuing with deliberate emphasis. To help someone build or fix things creates a bond, one that becomes deeper the more you assist them. Our law states this bond is proportional to your effort. Marcus' thoughts scrambled as he tried to piece together what she was telling him. It wasn't just his job, Morethes went beyond mere contracts and labor. 4 months, Sereth intoned solemnly now, every major system on our world, thousands of hours of devoted labor by this human engineer. She looked directly at Marcus with a mix of adoration and nervousness in her golden eyes. His breath caught as she continued by our sacred law. You have created a debt bond with Kythera itself. He felt like he was falling through the air without ropes to catch him. His brain was spinning from this revelation. But wait, Marcus interrupted softly, trying to wrap his head around it all. With me? Sereth nodded, taking another step closer as she spoke, represented by its queen. Her voice softened, but held unwavering clarity. To the planet itself and my people. The hall fell silent at her words, everyone waiting for Marcus' reaction. His mind raced through every system had fixed, each part of infrastructure resurrected with his hands. She stepped closer still, and to me personally. Her voice was low now, almost a whisper carried by unseen currents around them both. Marcus stared back at Sereth in disbelief, and maybe even something else, a flicker of realization that sent heat through him. She had been falling for him all this time. It explained the nervous glances whenever their eyes met, those lingering looks while he worked tirelessly on repairs she needed desperately to save her world. Marriages? Marcus asked breathlessly, as everything clicked into place. Contracts, cultural bonds, emotional connections spanning 4 months of relentless labor and repair work. Does that mean? Sereth's gaze softened again as the moment stretched between them, the hall around them fading away in favor of this intimate exchange. You can reject the bond, Sereth said carefully now, her eyes dropping momentarily before meeting his once more with a mixture of hope and dread. You would be free to leave. He processed everything that had transpired, her gratitude towards him for something far beyond the physical repairs, the law binding them together through acts he performed purely out of duty. And if I do not reject it? Marcus' voice was steady, but raw with uncertainty. every fiber in his body pulling towards Sereth despite the confusion. Her eyes snapped up. Marcus found himself alone in Queen Sereth's private chambers, a large space that reflected her regal elegance and dignified demeanor. The room was filled with artifacts of Kytheran history, each piece telling stories of a civilization rich in tradition and respect for creation. Sereth stood at the far end of the chamber, pacing back and forth as if trying to gather her thoughts. She wore a simple but elegant robe that accentuated her copper-gold skin and flowing amber hair cascading down her shoulders. Her golden eyes were filled with an emotion Marcus could not quite read. Was it nervousness? Hope? Marcus, she began, breaking the silence first. He approached slowly, his oil-stained hands hanging loosely at his sides as he tried to grasp what was happening around him. You said in public that we have some kind of bond. Sereth nodded and continued her pacing, her voice carrying a mix of urgency and hesitation. In Kytheran culture, the act of creation is considered sacred, most intimate thing two people can share. Building something together, fixing something together. Marcus' brow furrowed as he processed this new information. But I didn't know, he interjected softly. How can it be a real bond if I wasn't even aware? Sereth stopped mid-stride and faced him directly. The space between them seemed to close in on itself with the intensity of her gaze. That is why you have the right to reject it. She took another step toward him, her voice softer now, but still carrying weight. The bond requires acknowledgement to complete its formation. Marcus blinked, trying to wrap his mind around what she was saying. He thought back over their interactions, Sereth's constant presence, while he worked tirelessly on repairs for months. Why didn't you tell me? His question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. She hesitated before answering honestly, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I knew if I did, either you would have left or changed how you approached your work. She faltered briefly, then continued with more resolve. Or worse, never looked at me as you do the machines. Marcus' eyes widened in surprise, and realization dawned on him. He recalled countless nights spent fixing broken reactors, celebrating each system restored to life. How I look at machines? He asked, his voice almost a whisper back. Sereth smiled softly for the first time since their conversation began. Like they matter, she replied gently. Like fixing them is your whole world. She moved closer, her eyes never leaving him as she spoke, with sincerity and vulnerability shining through every word. No one has ever looked at my world, or met the way you look at a broken reactor about to be saved. Marcus felt the weight of these words settling heavily in his chest. 4 months of constant work had indeed brought life back into Kythera, but Sereth's admission made him realize something more profound was happening. I need to understand one thing, Marcus said decisively, after a moment's pause. She waited quietly, her gaze steady and unwavering. This bond you're talking about, he started carefully. It's based on the work I did? Sereth nodded slowly, in confirmation. And what if that work was incomplete? His question cut straight to the heart of his confusion. Confusion flickered across Sereth's face before comprehension dawned, and she understood where Marcus was going with this line of questioning. You mean, she began tentatively, if I hadn't participated enough personally in creating something together? Marcus nodded, taking a step towards her now that they were on the same page. Exactly. Sereth's eyes widened as understanding settled upon her features once more. She took another deep breath before speaking with clarity. I see, she said softly. The bond is stronger because of your dedication to Kythera alone, but not specifically to me. He nodded again, feeling a mix of determination and uncertainty well up inside him. So if I wanted to create a bond with you specifically, Marcus trailed off as he reached for her hand, gently but firmly, their fingers intertwining. Then we need to do something together. Sereth stared at him in disbelief before slowly nodding herself. The room fell silent once more, the weight of this moment pressing heavily between them. Do I have your permission? She asked quietly, after a moment's pause. Marcus smiled softly and squeezed her hand reassuringly. More than that, Queen Sereth, I want to. Sareth took another step closer until there was only an inch separating their bodies. She looked into his eyes with adoration shining brightly in hers, before leaning forward ever so slightly. Their first kiss was tender yet full of promisey, touch electric, and filled with unspoken words. When she pulled back, her golden eyes shimmered with tears that hadn't fallen, but were 6 weeks later. The garden was restored to its former glory and more. The air hummed with life as flowers bloomed in vibrant colors under a sky clearer than ever before. Marcus had spent countless hours alongside Queen Sareth, his hands working tirelessly while hers guided him through Kytheran techniques of horticulture. They laughed over clumsy mistakes, celebrating every successful plant that sprang to life. The bond between them wasn't accidental this time. It was deliberate and deepened with each day they worked together, repairing not just the garden, but their world piece by piece. Marcus' oil-stained hands were a familiar sight as he tinkered with machinery or soil. His eyes always lit up when celebrating another system save. One evening after weeks of tireless work, High Priest Vorn approached them in the midst of planting new saplings under the setting sun's glow. Sareth stood beside Marcus, her warm golden eyes full of pride and affection as she watched him at work. Queen Sareth, Vorn addressed with a stern tone that sent chills through both of them. This is unacceptable. The sacred bond is meant for Kytherans alone. Sareth turned to face the high priest squarely, her regal demeanor unwavering. She had anticipated this confrontation, but was determined not to back down. High Priest Vorn, she began calmly and firmly. The sacred bond recognizes creation, not species. Marcus has created more on this world than you ever have. Vorn's eyes narrowed dangerously at the words of rebuke from his queen. He seemed poised to argue further before retreating with a warning glance that promised future trouble. Back in their garden sanctuary, they prepared for the completion ceremony, a solemn event meant to acknowledge the sacred bond created through shared work and dedication. This time, it would be different, intimate rather than public. On the appointed day, Marcus stood beside Sareth as they placed the final stone together in silence, each hand resting on top of the other, where their fingers intertwined briefly before separating. The air crackled with a sense of anticipation that neither could explain, but both felt deeply. Sareth spoke first through shared creation. I acknowledge this bond. Marcus echoed her words without hesitation. Through shared creation, I acknowledge this bond. Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection clicking into place almost magically. The air around them seemed to hum with the intensity of their joint efforts and emotions intertwined. It is done, Sareth whispered softly once they stepped back from where they had completed their work. Marcus pulled her close gently, his hands finding resting places on either side of her waist as he gazed down at her warmly. Not Don't started. Sareth looked up into Marcus' eyes with newfound understanding and affection shining brightly within them before she laughed against his chest softly. The bond is sacred, permanent. He kissed the top of her head tenderly in response, a gesture that spoke volumes about how he truly felt towards both her and this new world they shared. You do not regret it, binding yourself to an alien world? An alien queen? She asked him once more with genuine concern evident on every line of her face. Marcus looked around at the garden, then back up into Sareth's eyes. I spent my whole life fixing things, he replied thoughtfully, reaching out to brush a stray lock of hair away from her forehead lovingly, making them work. He touched her cheek with his hand in an affectionate gesture that made her heart flutter and eyes soften. This is the first time fixing something has ever truly fixed me too. Sareth pulled him down towards her then, tilting her head up for a kiss she had waited patiently for since their initial meeting. They kissed passionately, under the stars, above the sky, reflecting back an image of two beings united through creation rather than mere accident. The bond between Marcus and Sareth wasn't just about repairing what was broken. It was about choosing to build something new towards a future that neither could have envisioned alone before now. Their relationship began with repairs, but evolved into a sacred commitment through mutual effort. dedication, and love things no amount of technical skill or cultural law could ever diminish. Their first kiss in the garden, they built side by side on this world Marcus had saved, symbolized more than just romantic affection. It represented two beings finally coming together as one heart, two worlds becoming one home for both of them forevermore.